A city is a living thing, a collection of stories layered one upon the other, and we often speak of Atlanta as a symbol of Black excellence, a cradle of the civil rights movement, a beacon of entrepreneurship and culture. It is a place of undeniable momentum, where the names of Black pioneers echo in the streets, and where Black-owned businesses have fueled a national economic recovery. But a city, like a person, has a public face and a private soul. And in the silent corners of its neighborhoods, a quieter, more stubborn truth persists, a weight carried not on shoulders but on the spirit. It is the truth of the wealth gap, a chasm so wide that for every dollar a Black family holds, a white family in the same city holds 46. This is not a number, it is a noun. It is a burden. And it is Maya's reality. The air in Maya Davis's apartment was thick and still, heavy with the humid Atlanta summer. The rhythmic hum of the ancient air conditioner did little to thin it, serving only as a monotonous drumbeat to the anxiety that coiled in her stomach. Maya stood in her small kitchen, the unforgiving fluorescent light casting long, tired shadows across the linoleum floor. The aroma of stale cooking oil clung to the walls, a ghost of meals past. Her fingers, calloused from years of working, traced the cracked surface of a plastic container on the countertop, a familiar and unyielding object that seemed to mock her with its permanence. She wore her work uniform, a simple, rough-hewn polyester blend that felt like a second skin, and the faint scent of cleaning solutions clung to the fabric, a constant reminder of the physical labor that had shaped her life. From the next room, the soft murmur of her sister, Jasmine, filled the quiet space. Maya imagined her hunched over textbooks, a future Maya desperately wanted for her. But the imagined scene was tinged with a familiar, bitter truth. The burden of student debt was a heavy chain that followed her sister, a debt that made the family's collective net worth negative and cast a long shadow over their aspirations. Maya felt a pang of guilt, a feeling as constant as the city's oppressive heat. She was the older sister, the protector, and yet every day she felt as though she were failing. The words her mother had always said, "You have to work twice as hard to get half as much," were a constant refrain in her mind, a mantra that had become a form of quiet torment. She had worked twice as hard, but where was the half? Her phone buzzed on the counter, a jarring intrusion into the silent anxiety. She glanced at the screen and saw the notification, a simple, cold, and final text message from her landlord. Rent increasing by $200 next month, new lease agreement sent via email. The words were a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole the air from her lungs. She stared at the phone, the bright screen a stark contrast to the shadowy kitchen, the message a physical manifestation of the system, the true antagonist. The landlord wasn't an evil person, not in the traditional sense. He was just a cog in the machine, a faceless entity that embodied the relentless systemic pressure that made simple survival an act of war. The notification brought with it a cascade of other interconnected problems. The price of gas had surged again, making her daily commute to a second job feel like a luxury. The grocery store's prices were absurd, forcing her to choose between nutrient-rich foods and cheaper, less healthy alternatives that filled the stomach but did little else. Their neighborhood was a food desert, and the journey to a more affordable market in a more affluent part of town was too costly in time and gas to be worth it. It was a vicious circle, a trap designed to keep people like her in place. Every choice was a compromise, and every step forward was met with a new, unforeseen obstacle. The rent increase was simply the final push off the edge, a fall she knew she could not survive. Her gaze shifted from the phone to her reflection in the grimy kitchen window. The woman staring back at her was not defeated, not yet, but the strain was visible in her tired eyes, a silent question she no longer knew how to answer. It was at this moment, with the silence of her apartment amplifying her fear, that she knew she had to find another way. The path of endless backbreaking labor was a dead end. The system was designed to make her fail. But what if she could find a way around it? What if she could build a circle of her own? The oppressive feeling of the apartment was a weight that Maya could no longer bear. She needed air, a different kind of atmosphere, and her feet,
as if guided by an ancient compass, carried her toward Donna Lucia's salon. The moment she pushed open the glass door, a wave of sensory warmth washed over her. The air, thick with the scent of coconut oil, shea butter, and the faint sweet perfume of hairspray, felt like a comforting embrace. The sounds of the salon were a living symphony, the low buzz of a hairdryer, the rhythmic snip of scissors, and the melodic cadence of women's laughter and gossip, underscored by the gentle hum of a gospel radio station. It was more than a business. It was a sanctuary, a place where stories were exchanged and burdens were shared. Donna Lucia, a woman whose small frame held the resilience of generations, looked up from a customer's hair. Her hands, worn and calloused from decades of work, paused their methodical braiding. A soft, knowing smile touched her lips as she saw the strain in Maya's eyes. She simply nodded toward an empty chair, offering a wordless invitation. Maya sank into the familiar vinyl, the cool material a small relief against the heat. Donna Lucia continued her work, but her voice, a low and steady murmur, filled the air. She spoke of her own journey, of the countless women who, for decades, had found their own paths to dignity by selling products door to door, at small parties in their living rooms, or from the back of a car. It was a business model that had been a gateway to the workforce for countless women, a way to build a community while building an income. As Donna Lucia spoke, Maya's mind began to churn. She listened not just to the words, but to the history and the wisdom they carried. She saw an old model, a traditional route, but her imagination began to paint a new version of it, a modern one. What if the living room wasn't a physical space, but a digital one? What if the party was a video and the community was a network of women across the city, and even the country connected not by proximity but by shared needs and aspirations? The idea, a simple seed of thought, felt like a jolt of pure energy in her weary spirit. She imagined a line of non-toxic, clean beauty products, a line that celebrated black skin and hair, that could be sold not just for profit but to build a network of support and empowerment. With a new sense of purpose, Maya returned to her apartment. The air still felt heavy, but the anxiety had been replaced by a fierce, nervous energy. She spent the next day emptying her savings account, a terrifying and liberating act. With the small stack of money, she purchased a starter kit from a small, independent, Black-owned beauty brand she had found online. The boxes sat on her kitchen counter, a tangible symbol of her gamble. That night, Maya's hands trembled as she held her phone. The screen's glow illuminated her face, a mix of fear and determination. She positioned the products carefully on a small table and, with a deep breath, went live on Instagram. The camera was a cold, unblinking eye. She began to speak, her voice hesitant at first, then gaining strength as she found her rhythm, not as a salesperson, but as a storyteller. She spoke of the importance of self-care, of nourishing one's body, and of the need for products made with care and intention. The first comments trickled in, a heart emoji, a question about a product, a simple, "Hey girl, I see you." The digital community, this new circle, was beginning to form around her. It wasn't the noise of a bustling party, but the soft, steady hum of connection. And it was the sound of a new beginning.
Maya's business did not explode in a flash of viral fame. It grew with the slow, deliberate strength of a tree taking root in fertile soil. She learned the rhythms of her new life, a delicate dance between her day job and her entrepreneurial venture. The glow of her phone screen became a nocturnal sun, casting light on her face as she packaged orders late into the night. The scent of her products, a clean herbal aroma, began to mingle with the tired smell of her apartment, a fragrant promise of a different future. She found her voice online, not just as a seller, but as a leader. Her lives and posts were more than advertisements. They were intimate conversations about the struggle for self-care in a world that demanded all of one's energy. She shared stories about the need to choose between healthy, expensive food and what was merely available. And she spoke with a quiet wisdom that resonated with her audience.
building trust, and a community that was as dedicated to her success as she was. She was building not just the business, but a circle. But the system, the great and faceless antagonist, had a way of making itself known, a constant low-grade fever that never seemed to break. A crucial shipment of her most popular products was delayed for weeks, lost in a logistical vortex that no one on the customer service line could explain. She spent hours on hold, the tinny sound of the hold music a monotonous counterpoint to her rising frustration. Every call ended in the same place, an opaque wall of bureaucracy, a reminder that her small business was a tiny and insignificant cog in a giant machine that was not designed to work for her. The narrative showed her quiet fury, the way her shoulders tensed with the weight of her helplessness. The logistical failure was a problem of time and money, but the next obstacle struck at the very heart of her ambition. The time had come for Maya to seek a small business loan to expand, to finally hire her sister, to escape the physical limits of her one-woman operation. She meticulously prepared her business plan and met with a loan officer at a local bank, her hope a fragile, bright thing in the sterile office. Her optimism was met with a polite yet impenetrable wall of institutional procedure. The loan officer, a man with a practiced, neutral expression, informed her that her credit score was too low and that her lack of established business assets made the loan a non-starter. He offered no alternatives, no advice, simply a brochure for their general services. The words were a bitter echo of the wealth gap that defined her city. For the system, her lack of a nest egg, her history of debt, and the fact that she had no employees were not temporary circumstances, but unchangeable flaws. As she walked out of the bank, the humid air outside felt colder than the air-conditioned lobby. A quiet, searing pain shot through her, a mix of shame and anger. The sting was not just a personal failure, but a historical one. A distant memory, a subtle flashback surfaced in her mind. She was a little girl again, sitting with her sister on the carpet, watching her mother on the phone, the tone of her voice strained and tight with the fear of overdue bills. Jasmine, still so young and naive, had asked why they didn't have a nice house like the kids on television, and their mother had simply, sadly replied that they were just getting by. The memory was a heavy emotional weight. She had vowed then to never feel that kind of helplessness. And yet here she was, in a different time, but in the same position. When she arrived home, the familiar sight of Jasmine with her textbooks was not a source of comfort, but of tension. Her sister, sensing the weight of the moment, asked about the meeting. Maya simply shook her head. The silence that followed was full of unspoken words. The narrative captured Jasmine's internal struggle, the way her sister's skepticism seemed to grow stronger, her worry for Maya's unstable path battling with her desire to see her succeed. She did not say the words, but the sentiment was clear in the way she averted her gaze. This path is too risky. The traditional way is safer. It was a sentiment born of fear, a silent echo of the system's victory. But Maya, with the sting of the bank's refusal still fresh in her mind, knew that she could not and would not give up.
Maya's resolve, forged in the fires of the bank's rejection and her sister's silent doubt, solidified into a new, audacious plan. Inspired by the explosive growth of Black-owned businesses in Atlanta, which had added over 70,000 new firms to the national economy in just 5 years, she decided to bring her digital circle into the physical world. She would organize a local artisan fair, a celebration of community and entrepreneurship, a space where she and other small Black business owners could finally be seen. The morning of the fair dawned with a humid, golden light. The air, thick with the promise of rain, carried the scent of grilling food and the sweetness of fresh-cut flowers. The soundscape of the event was a joyful cacophony,
A mixtape of neo-soul and hip-hop playing from a portable speaker, the enthusiastic chatter of vendors setting up their stalls, and the excited shouts of children. Maya's booth was a vibrant oasis of color and texture. Her products, arranged on a rustic wooden table, glowed under the soft light of a battery-powered lamp. The air around her booth smelled of lavender and shea butter, a clean, inviting aroma that drew people in. She felt the palpable energy of her community, the collective hum of hope and resilience that filled the space. As the day progressed, the fair became a resounding success. People lingered at her booth, touching the smooth glass of her serums and asking questions about her ingredients and her story. Maya sold more products in a few hours than she had online, and the feeling of direct connection with her customers was intoxicating. The narrative described the way her hands, now accustomed to packaging boxes, trembled slightly as she handed over a product to a customer, a small, tangible triumph. Then, without warning, the lights in her tent and several others flickered and died. A low groan of frustration rippled through the crowd. Maya's stomach dropped. The battery pack, a crucial piece of equipment, had given out, and she had no backup. Her booth was plunged into shadow, and the carefully arranged products became indistinct shapes in the dim light. It was the system, rearing its head in a new, insidious form. The frailty of infrastructure, the lack of backup, the single point of failure that a small business could not afford. The humiliation and fear she had felt at the bank returned, a cold wave washing over her. She watched as customers, confused and disheartened, began to disperse. Her hard work, her hope, was on the verge of collapsing. But before she could fully surrender to despair, a voice cut through the quiet panic. It was Donna Lucia, her eyes narrowed with fierce determination. She had seen Maya's dilemma and without a word began to speak with other vendors, a rapid, animated conversation filled with gestures. Within minutes, the community rallied. One vendor offered a portable charger, another a small generator. The woman selling candles brought a handful to illuminate Maya's products. The customers who had been walking away now returned, drawn back by the sight of the collective effort. The narrative described the way the light from the candles flickered across Maya's face, illuminating her tears of relief. It was a testament to the community she had built, a living, breathing circle of support. The triumph was not hers alone, it belonged to everyone. The fair continued, and Maya's booth became a symbol of collective resilience. The crisis had not been an end, but a catalyst. The community she had built online was now a physical reality, a network of people who had each other's backs. Maya watched as Donna Lucia, with her gnarled but steady hands, helped her arrange the new lighting. The mentor, the guide, had been right. The true strength was not in working twice as hard alone, but in creating a system of support that would not let one person fail. The day had started as a showcase of individual entrepreneurship, but it had ended as a powerful collective statement against the unseen forces that sought to hold them down. The fair was not merely a moment of triumph. It was a turning point, a catalyst. In the weeks that followed, the success of her impromptu community rally rippled through the online world, and Maya's business, The Circle, truly began to flourish. Orders flooded in, not just for her products, but for the story and the spirit they represented. The narrative no longer focused on her struggle, but on her resilience and the strength of the community that had risen to support her. The sound of her phone's notifications, once a source of anxiety, now chimed with the cheerful melody of new orders and messages from women asking for her advice. But Maya knew that her greatest triumph was not to be measured in dollars and cents. The true victory, the one that resonated most deeply, was in the legacy she was building. She began to hold digital workshops, using the same social media platforms that had launched her business to mentor other women. She taught them how to create their own routes, not to become her competitors, but to become her partners in a new economy. She spoke of the importance of building a loyal customer base, of using social media as a tool for storytelling and community building, and of the profound significance of investing in themselves and their neighborhoods. The camera, once a cold and intimidating eye, became a portal through which she shared her wisdom. She spoke to women who, like her, had felt the quiet, oppressive weight of the system, the shame of low credit scores, the constant fear of a rent increase, the feeling of being an invisible cog in a machine that was not built for them. She showed them how to turn that pain into power, how to transform their passion into a tangible source of income and empowerment. The circle was no longer just her business. It was a living, breathing network of self-sufficient entrepreneurs, a testament to the power of collective action. The narrative culminated with a final, sweeping reflection. The story of Maya and her circle was not an anomaly. It was a single, luminous thread in a much larger, more powerful tapestry. The narrator's voice, now full of quiet authority, connected her personal victory to the broader national trend of Black-owned businesses driving economic recovery and growth for everyone. Maya's journey had shown that investing in communities that have been historically neglected is not a zero-sum game. The success of her small, personal project proved that when one person succeeds, it creates a ripple effect that lifts up an entire community, and that this growth does not come at the expense of others. In the end, the camera panned out, revealing not just Maya, but the network of women she had inspired. Their faces, a mosaic of determination and hope, filled the screen. The air no longer carried the scent of anxiety or the sound of an ancient air conditioner. It was filled with the sounds of collaboration, the low hum of shared purpose, and the whispered promise of a future where dignity and prosperity were not a luxury, but a right. The story of Maya was a quiet, powerful testament to a truth as old as the city itself, that true resilience is not found in a single solitary struggle, but in the unbreakable strength of a community that refuses to let its light be extinguished.